Welcome to Blacklisted Radio. I'm your host, Doug Owen, and I am glad to be back. It's been 2 weeks since the last edition of this podcast. A lot of stuff's happened. It's going to be jam-packed, so I'm really excited to be back in the saddle tonight. It's the 12th day of February 2017. We're here already. Yeah, so go to the website, blacklistedradio.com. That's the website dedicated to the show. If you're not familiar, I am the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. We curate and publish a lot of news, content, analysis, even infographics, a lot of really, I think, powerful pieces of information that you can find there on a daily basis. Keeps you up to date on current events and the things that, personally, I find that matter in the world today, considering all the stuff out there, all of the talking heads, all of the minutia, and of course the constant pulse of media inundated people through just a variety of means. It's this show is intended for the few, the people that listen to it, to kind of break through that, and we try to encapsulate that analysis in a somewhat funny look at the weeks that were. So thanks for being part of the show. Please let people know about it. You can find us on YouTube, just about any social network or podcatching format. Of course, we do it live. Ken's there behind the glass. Want to thank him for the production of the show, and RBN, that's there behind the scenes taking your phone calls if you like. 512-222-3067 is the text line for the show. So a meme that I think should be addressed is that the Donald Trump presidency is imploding. That there is just tons of polls that you're going to find that say that he's the most unpopular president ever. It's unprecedented. Then you go to other polls, go to Breitbart, go to Drudge Report, go to the London Observer, the Telegraph, even the New York Times, and you're going to see that there's this contrary narrative. Other polls say that the quote-unquote Muslim ban, and I've read the document, the actual executive order. It's pretty easy to do. You can just, Control F, find and look for the word Muslim in the executive order. It doesn't exist. Everybody in media is obsessed on this non-story. And meanwhile, there's some really interesting things that are happening within the White House that are just not being talked about at all. Mostly it's a war between the media and Donald Trump. Of course, SNL has taken Spicer, his press secretary, and if you haven't seen it, Melissa McCarthy does a pretty funny Sean Spicer, but the show is actually, they're saying the ratings are great, but compared to I think a long-term look or a multi-year look at the ratings, SNL, it's just, a lot of it's just not funny. A lot of it's really obvious comedy, and that one bit may save the show. These are the kind of things that are being talked about. I know for some of you, you're like, oh, this minutia has been talked about over and over again. You see Berkeley riots. That was interesting. Just one of the many little fires that is igniting on college campuses around the nation. So we're going to talk a lot about some things that are going on in academia. But I want to talk about the Trump transition team. We want to kind of, distance ourselves, myself included, and my publications, in my writings, away from this division I see really playing out in alternative media. You have people like Alex Jones, who's, kind of been bickering with Kurt Nimmo. I know this is a lot of inside baseball. For people that listen to this show, it's probably interesting for a lot of new listeners and people that are not really, is deeply into alternative media. It might mean nothing. But basically, Kurt Nimmo's accused Alex Jones of, and I hate talking about other personalities, but it's interesting because of the power and the magnitude and the reach that the Alex Jones empire really has now. And, Kurt Nimmo's highlighted this shift towards, attacking social justice warriors, being completely pro-Trump, or at least, 95% pro-Trump. Alex Jones was recently, and I don't follow or listen to a lot of Alex Jones, not because, he's hyperbolic and, sometimes blows his top. I think that's kind of the allure, the act that a lot of people like. He's, a very animated, funny, smart, yet, this guy that, could just blow up and go into this epic rant at any moment. It keeps people, enthralled. And after a while, you just realize that there's just so much content. You can't listen to 8 hours of stuff a day. And so he just became not part of my daily diet of news and podcasts. But anyway, when he's on the Joe Rogan podcast, I thought, this got to be interesting. So, he was talking about this war that I think a lot of us are seeing that's happening behind the scenes in the deep state. And of course, not really talking about anything specific, but he said on the podcast, and I'm surprised that there hasn't been a windfall from all of the true conspiracy type people in the alternative media that are not just, blinded by the anti-multinational globalist policies of Donald Trump, which we're going to get into that too. Anyway, so he said that he went to this secret meeting, and he said, I can't tell you a lot about it, Joe, can't tell you a lot, but that there are people inside of the government that, assumingly, people in the intelligence agencies, of course, one of the things he highlights is all of his sources within the deep state, and that he was invited to this secret conclave to talk about, the Trump administration going after the Clinton pedophile criminal network of globalists that are anti-American and pro-internationalism. And I think that there's a lot there. And I think that, number one, there's obvious questions of, being part of a secret society. That is exactly what this would be, being invited to secret meetings. So I'm surprised there's not a lot of backlash. Or, maybe the majority of people are just drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to that because, Trump is this outsider. He has a great story. Great story. He speaks to the people, and he's getting jobs back in this country, and he's pro-industrialist and all of the other things that people see making America great again. Getting us out of NAFTA, getting us out of these bad and very unprofitable trade agreements. Things that were kind of dead on arrival anyway, but pushing forward with this perceived Muslim ban. Won't spend a lot of time talking about it because really the ACLU and the courts are saying that the intent, of course, is a Muslim ban. And then, you have to look at the other countries that are exempted. We have the true purveyors and funders and financiers of terror, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar. A lot of terrorists come from Jordan, and those people, shouldn't all be deemed terrorists. And God forbid we delay them for 120 days. Now the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Border Patrol want to get into your Facebook account, go through your social media, make sure that you're a upstanding citizen and you have a good digital footprint. In China, they're already grading citizens based on their love of the state and their compliance with very Orwellian and downright authoritarian view of public speech. So that's kind of a that's a worry for sure. A lot of people don't see it as a big deal. According to Pew, people love it. 65% of people agree. If you look at other polls from AP, very few people support the Muslim ban. So, we've heard all of the rhetoric from the left. I think that is just not really fleshed out about this fascist Donald Trump. And when you think fascist, you just think a-hole. At least that's what a lot of people think. But really, this idea that there is this corporate integration into government that is, makes it one. And we have a division between labor, people that work for stuff, and capital, kind of like a Marxist idea of, this elite that have capital, that have usury, and at some point you have the schism, you have the divide. Anyway, so Steve Bannon, everybody's saying this guy's a racist, he's an a-hole, he is a bigot, and there's not a lot of meat to that, I don't think. He's hired Jewish writers of the name Horowitz and many others that have been critical of Jewish policy and U.S.-Israeli politics. So, I mean, anti-Semitic, far from it. Far from it. The Trump regime is deeply embedded with Jewish and Israeli interests. There's no doubt about it. So those are kind of non sequiturs. But interestingly enough, he is kind of a scam guy. He worked with Goldman Sachs. Interesting story came out. He sunk $60 million into this failed World of Warcraft gold farming scheme. And this is one of the many things like the biodome that Steve Bannon was behind, that where they put the scientists and they're supposed to live in this dome for 2 years. Turned out to be a scandal and they wasted a lot of money. This is where you have Chinese kids, people in foreign countries, basically playing World of Warcraft, creating money, and then figuring out how to make money for Goldman Sachs. He's not the only person that lost Goldman Sachs money or has involvement with Goldman Sachs on the Trump team. But, I mean, that speaks volumes. All of the other rhetoric, and we have a white supremacist, a KKK member, open, authoritarian, blah, 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 all the hype, not there. Scam artist and somebody that's deeply invested and embedded with Goldman Sachs. Absolutely. Somebody that has a media arm through Breitbart that understands popularizing and creating a message and being able to be independent of the lying CNN media, the mainstream media, and more alternative type forms of media. He's there. I mean, he is a strategizer. So that is the first member of the team we shall talk about tonight, unpacking the transition team here on Blacklisted News Radio. We saw the confirmation of Betsy DeVos. She is, she's married to the Amway conglomerate billionaire who brought you pyramid schemes of things like Amway, which are not necessarily bad. And actually, we have listeners and people that I know and love that dig Amway, and I don't know how relevant it is anymore, but getting good products, or at least comparable products for a reduced amount of money for a huge amount of upfront funding or buying of products, which is how I understand it, is one of many schemes, I guess, that are kind of slimy, like Trump College, things like that are designed to kind of bilk investors, to bilk kids out of money, ill thought out plans to transition to Trump Tower from being in Trump College. A lot of things that I just think are kind of scummy. Interestingly enough, she is the sister of Eric Prince, who is the founder of Blackwater. Of course, Blackwater, infamous for going to court for killing 17 Iraqi civilians. Eric Prince has been very vocal about his thoughts on what the U.S. empire is and should be doing inside of the Middle East, and that is an ethnic cleansing, a new modern-day crusade, in his words. And so when you think about that kind of alignment with Trump and the evangelicals, people that are very well tied to a very powerful and elite class of people in this country, you have Eric Prince tied right to the military-industrial complex. Interestingly enough, he is the guy who told Breitbart News on Sirius XM that, quote, well-placed sources in the New York Police Department, the NYPD, was going to do a press conference soon announcing the warrants and the additional arrests they were making in the Anthony Weiner investigation, but received huge pushback from the Justice Department. Fake news? I don't know. We're going to talk a little bit about Pizzagate here. I do want to talk about the transition team first. So he's somebody who has, kind of leaked fake news, if you will. This thing did not play out, and whether it was, a concerted effort by the Justice Department, because obviously they've kept the Justice Department together for the most part. Well, no, excuse me, not the Justice Department. I was thinking about the FBI and his good buddy there that brought up Hillary's fake emails. But this was reported on by the AP. This was probably pretty damaging, and it was a very interesting tidbit that I followed. So you have, the mercenary, the man that's owned Academy, who has so many ties to the military. His rich billionaire sister-in-law just happens to be the Secretary of Education. Okay, fair enough. Maybe she does a good job. Let's talk about Andrew Putzer. Andrew Putzer is the new labor secretary. He's a billionaire CEO of the fast food chain CKE Restaurants. No big deal. He owns KFC. They bought out Hardee's. He's you can read his wiki. But interestingly enough, from 78 to 83, Putzer was an associate at the law offices of St. Louis attorney Morris Schechner, practicing corporate law. In 1984, he moved the Stoller Partnership and worked for a trial attorney named Charles A. Siegel. So, interestingly enough, Morris Schenker was an American lawyer who was best known for his connections to labor leader Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters during the funding of Las Vegas in the 1960s. So this makes a lot of sense considering, we've talked about it, and I thought I joked, but I said one of the things that Trump may know that a lot of people don't know is where Jimmy Hoffa is buried. And I didn't realize this and these close connections to Morris A. Schechner till I started doing a little bit more research into each one of these powerful people. And, I started seeing this ideological and philosophical movement of people that are definitely aligned in a very, very powerful way behind Donald Trump. And that is the people behind the schism in the deep state. So Schechner, he first came to national attention during the Coffer hearings in the 1950s, which he represented a number of underworld figures. He represented Jimmy Hoffa in 1966 and became Hoffa's chief of counsel. So this is the guy that Andrew Putzer, who's now the labor secretary, Teamsters, Mafia, Jimmy Hoffa. You get the idea. That's why he's there. Makes a lot of sense. He's also a Russian Jewish immigrant who arrived. I guess Schechner was a Russian Jewish immigrant. So there you go. Then you have Trump's nominee for Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, who is none other than a huge, wealthy billionaire financier who invests in buying and selling companies in distressed industries. The chop shop, buying companies, bankrupting them, that kind of thing. It's unscrupulous, definitely. Somebody that understands money and how to make it. But he made his early fortune at the fund for the Rothschild Group. Rothschild Bank is now under criminal investigation over a missing $4 billion in corruption. This corruption probe. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Luxembourg unit of Edmond de Rothschild Group, a private bank that manages money on behalf of wealthy clients, is cooperating with an official investigation of money that may have flowed from a Malaysian government investment fund at the center of various worldwide corruption probes. So you read this article, look up the Rothschild Group. Wilbur Ross is a veteran of this institution, and it is tied to global criminal cartel activity. And so this is a very advantageous appointment for the Rothschilds. Now, the Rothschilds would have won. Evelyn Rothschild, of course, good personal friend of Hillary Clinton, gave lots of money to her, had dinners that were, I think, $30,000 to $50,000 per plate. You could get to hang out with some Rothschilds and Hillary Clinton for the right price. That's who you have there. Then you have Steve Mnuchin, which is, I think, the consensus on how you say his name. I want to call him Munchin. And a lot of people do. Trump's Treasury Secretary is a former partner at the global investment bank Goldman Sachs. Not a surprise, right? More Goldman people. He was also the hedge fund manager and, until his nomination, a board member of the Fortune 500 financial holding company, Citigroup, CIT Group. He's also a member of the Yale University secret society, Skull and Bones. George Bush, Skull and Bones. John Kerry, Skull and Bones. I mean, these guys are everywhere. And I think that it's notable because that used to be a big deal, especially in alternative media, that this guy is a bona fide member of a secret society where they allegedly do all sorts of weird gay things and have the skull of Geronimo and probably do weird and gay things to that skull. But out of that secret society, out of that club of very elite people, have come up so many powerful people in the private and public sector. So there you go. Nobody in alternative media is, it's basically been put to the side because of the greater good. Let's not talk about it. Used to be. This was a big deal. Vincent Viola is Trump's nominee for Army Secretary. He's a billionaire, former chairman of the New York Mercantile Exchange, and current chairman of Virtue Financial, a high-frequency trading firm. Seems like he should know how to... that job is about buying high-tech weapons and working with the military-industrial complex. Linda McMahon, small business administrator, billionaire. She's now valued around $1.5 billion. She's married to billionaire WWE promoter Vince McMahon, probably one of the less criminal. Gary Cohen is Trump's economic advisor and director of the White House National Economic Council. He just left his post as president and chief operating officer at Goldman Sachs for the job. Convenient. Anthony Scaramucci has served as senior advisor to Trump on the executive committee of the presidential team. Previously, he was founding and co-managing partner of a global investment firm, Skybridge Capital. Like Steve Bannon, also began his career at Goldman Sachs. Should I go on here? Actually, one of these guys, Rex Tillerson's the most interesting of them all. T-Rex, as they're now calling him. And his ties to the military-industrial complex and, of course, ExxonMobil, extensive political ties to this very powerful faction of the deep state. So there you go. I mean, consider the people that are there and what's happening in this overarching prevailing ideology where there is this need to fight back against there is a crusade and somewhat Christian tinted. One of the things you hear a lot about Trump is how Christian he is and how much he cares about church and religion. And that is one of the things that is interesting about all of these men, that they have this ideological vision. And one of the things I think is probably more compelling when you try to prove that Trump has a Muslim ban, which is more of a Muslim delay. But I think a lot of people just don't want to talk about this. They don't want to, address these kind of issues because, it diminishes what he is doing. And there was just really, before we get there, let's just talk about the continuation. We were talking about the pedophile networks that Alex Jones is saying that and lots of people are talking about that are in high places in government. A couple big stories. Disgraced pervert Anthony Weiner's now facing child porn charges. He could face up to 15 years in prison for this. Not news to a lot of people, but I mean, this is Huma Abedin's husband. He was the beard in their relationship, and most people already know, or most assume, that Hillary Clinton did have a very personal and probably romantic relationship with Huma Abedin. She has interesting brotherhood ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and definitely an operator. And the fact that this came to light during the trial, this is just one of the many things that was being given to the media from intelligent sources, obviously inside of this deep state, kind of shows that schism. And so I think that there is a case that there are many people inside of government that are trying to push these people out. Interestingly enough, Prince Charles' bishop friend is freed from prison early despite committing horrific sex offenses against 18 teenagers and young men. This came out of the Express. A predatory bishop who had links to Prince Charles has been freed from prison halfway through his sentence for his sex offenses. Peter Ball, described as a monster by his victim, served only 16 months for grooming and molesting aspiring novice monks. One victim committed suicide, while others have suffered long-lasting trauma. Lifelong-lasting trauma, I would imagine. But this is another example of these people in very high places. We talked about Dennis Hastert. We've talked about John Podesta. All of these relationships. There's this interesting theory that I was reading about that Gawker Media, which was sued and shut down, was directly gone after by Peter Thiel, who is a Bilderberger, who is a very, very influential person. He is, of course, was it PayPal? Peter Thiel. I forget all of his credits, but he is a technocrat to the nth degree. He's right there with Bill Gates, and very, very powerful and rich. And anyway, Peter Thiel went after Gawker, sued them to death. And one of the things people are wondering is whether or not it was because they released the flight logs of Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein on his Lolita Express. Of course, this proved that Hillary Clinton herself had visited this slave encampment at least 6 times. And the article is still there. We republished it today just because I thought it was important to point this out, that Gawker Media, not very shortly thereafter, was sued to death by a big-time Hillary supporter. And, he's Peter Thiel. And so check that out. But they did actually put out the flight logs. They did some real investigative journalism here, exposing this connection, which the mainstream media just didn't touch. I mean, we heard nothing about Jeffrey Epstein and their connections to the Clintons. Interestingly enough, though, there is a mention of this by Donald Trump in one of the debates, saying that Hillary Clinton had an island problem, and that, I paraphrase, but that she had issues of morality and problems that may come out, which was a veiled threat about this information. Gawker Media released it, didn't get a lot of play. So that is what we see. There is this group, this faction that was led by their candidate, Hillary Clinton. These all had a similar worldview, these people, and they were neoliberalists, they were globalists, and they were transnationalists. above and beyond. With Trump's team, you're seeing, some definite nationalist ideas, which are not necessarily a bad thing. But did I lose Ken? I think I lost Ken for a minute there. Oh, the show was too hot to handle, so the CIA had to shut us down there for a moment. Anyway, Gawker Media published the proof of Bill Clinton on the air with Jeffrey Epstein. Food for thought there as to why Gawker was immediately sued out of existence. So I wanted to talk about. I think it's my internet that's going down. I see the stream just died. Convenient. That's why we always have a backup to the backup to the backup. You can go to blacklistedradio.com and listen to the backup. Might as well just go ahead and put up stream 2 while I'm thinking about it. BuzzFeed is being sued for defamation over the Trump dossier. More fake news, and we just can't stop talking about it. It is a meme that is continuing. Oh, maybe we're just having the network break up. Gotta wonder if it's because of the content. I doubt it, because we have the show notes and all of that available. So we have BuzzFeed being sued over fake news, and people are continuing to freak out about fake news. One of the things that got Donald Trump elected was fake news, and that's a big problem in a lot of people's minds. So one of the more idiotic commentators from CNN, Chris Cuomo, I'm just going to say this because he's the same guy that said that journalists were allowed to read the WikiLeaks releases and emails, and that it was not okay for average citizens, that's the job of the media, that they are the filter for the truth. And so, of course, he was chastised on a lot of websites like my own for his comments. Now he's saying that when you call somebody fake news, they're very hurt by this. CNN being called fake news seems to really, it hurts bad. If you're a journalist, probably the worst thing you could be accused of is being fake. Although, if you look at the history of journalism, how many people in journalism, in media, were spies, spooks, running clandestine operations, working with government to get all sorts of messaging to the people throughout time. The media's objectivity has really lacked in recent years, and CNN puts out a lot of fake crap. They've got so many of these different political blogs that have, I don't know, just probably tons of unpaid intern workers there. One of the comments this weekend was that what's her name, Melania Trump, did not appear with during this meeting with Abe, the president of Japan, and that his wife was left unaccompanied. And, they just made her seem like she's a selfish bitch, and she's a little dude, she wouldn't show up. And then, you see 5 other articles saying, yeah, she was there in the SUV, she greeted him, they had pictures with her kissing her on the runway, getting off of the plane. And so that's fake news. It's bullcrap. It's propaganda, and it's just, I guess it's people, really trying hard to get some kind of I see what happened. We blew the brake, and that's why Ken's over here. Sorry about that, Ken. I see what happened. Anyway, yeah, so that's an example of fake news. Well, of course, Chris Cuomo has now said that it's like using the N-word. It's like dropping an N-bomb when you say that journalists are fake news. Even more freaked out about fake news is Apple boss Tim Cook. He's saying that we need a campaign against phony reports, that fake news is killing people's minds. A fascinating look into this phenomena called Fake News by Tim Cook. You should check it out. But it's absent of the fake news is the fact that people are constantly being inundated by his technological products, taking no real look at the other societal and political effect of having instant technology and platforms that have become internet ghettos where people fight over their mother over politics on Facebook, and people feel so. I know people all the time that just have to delete the Facebook because people are driving them mad. And I'm all for that, but you realize how, Facebook and looking at people's, fake worlds, that's driving people crazy. People showing off all of the things they have and what they've eaten to one another. That probably drives people crazy. Fake news is something that is always out there, and people are always going to have. I would think that 30 or 40 years ago, you didn't have a lot of choices for news, so fake news was pushed upon people all the time. At least now you can look at other alternative viewpoints to come to the truth in your own way. So there's that. Upcoming British legislation could jail journos for 14 years. This is another fine example of something that's a huge issue. Authoritarianism. It's not just happening in the United States. While Europe is worried about Donald Trump, and he's this bad guy for the Western world to focus on. He's this madman that may blow up everything. You see the authoritarianism and the push to control, even have more control over British journalists and those that are trying to reveal government crimes, leaking information to the press. This is far worse than anything the U.S. has actually done. Bradley Manning served 7 years. Chelsea Manning, whatever you like. And there you go. Interestingly enough, Melania Trump does have this legal libel lawsuit against Webster Tarpley. Webster Tarpley used to be on the GCN radio network. Probably still is. He does a podcast called the World Crisis Radio. And, I followed him for years. Used to listen to him. When he was one of the few voices that you'd find in the morning and sometimes on the weekends on some of these alternative media radio networks, Genesis Communications to be exact. And he definitely had a lot of information and was kind of part of the 9/11 truth movement. I hate to use that term, but that's what that was kind of a self-described group of people that were, researching false flag terrorism and comparing that to the events of 9/11, and he was a prominent voice in it. Well, anyway, on his show, he talked about these rumors that have been well established, that there were rumors that Melania Trump was a high-end prostitute. And he said on his podcast that there were rumors. He didn't say that they were true. It was true. These were things that were being said. So, anyway, that was picked up by the Daily Mail, and she is suing the crap out of Webster Tarpley. I think she wants $75,000 from him. So, there you go. Here's some other stuff that was just, off the charts. Economists now are saying, as predicted, if Le Pen in France, if there is a victory, would lead to a massive sovereign debt default and global financial chaos. If this right-wing fascist leader is somehow elected. And I don't know. I know that she's the progeny of a, former Nazi. I don't hold that against her, I guess. I was the son of a son of a son of a preacher, so I'm pretty far from that. Although I do like to get on the pulpit and yell from the soapbox, but nonetheless, I don't have a lot of thoughts about her other than she being, very anti-EU and talking about, accountability. And, the EU has been the lapdog that's been dragged by, these neoconservative and neoliberal madmen that have been steering U.S. foreign policy for the last 8 years, while the left was completely subdued by Obama. I mean, that is just where we're at. So, I mean, just more of this, Brexit. If we have Brexit, the economy is going to blow up. If Donald Trump becomes president, the economy is going to blow up. Lots of rhetoric that is absolutely designed to make people crazy. Tim Cook talked about it. Looking at fake news makes people crazy. And I absolutely think that that's true in the Orwellian sense that, he is somebody who's a proponent of fake news. So some of the other things that are kind of, funding this coming class war. Interesting piece, must read, by Charles Hugh Smith. The coming class wars, the forces dividing us are overwhelming those that unite us. And it's a really good look at where this Marxist socialist concept of the conflict between labor, the working class, and the owners of capital, the elites, that there will be this inevitable fulcrum in history that has always happened, where you have the unwashed masses with pitchforks, and ultimately that system goes up into flames. One of the things that happened during the early 20th century is that rather than that divide crashing what you would call modern day capitalism, you saw that there was this bargaining between the working class and those that owned the capital in this country, that owned the banks, that ultimately, because of a constant struggle, a constant battle, a constant bloody battle, those in power relinquished the amount of capital and resources necessary to be able to survive. They relinquished enough power to where a middle class could arise and it could benefit and suit them, and they could create a consumer rather than trying to break people with free labor, create a consumer society. And that capitalism had been able to arise. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that there were regular bombings on Wall Street. Banks were being blown up. Anarchists were fighting for every inch. You also had labor unions that were just as powerful, that had to fight and scratch and claw and set things on fire to finally get to a point where we had a social contract, where you had people that could get good jobs, good pay, and the 40-hour work week, all the things that I think modern day wage slaves somewhat enjoy. Not being able to be, forced to do things that'll kill you, that are overly dangerous, giving you a safety harness as they stick you up on a boom lift, things like that. But right now, we're starting to see that schism once again, where the working class, the labor class, has less and less control, less ability to make their way into the dwithering middle class. And that's just what's going to be left after the automation of jobs really hits the middle class and the economy. Saw a study that said that 60% of government workers could be automated. People working social services and probably most paperwork filing folks that are on the phones that create the huge paper trail and bureaucracy that is government. I mean, it's just like, what would you do if we actually had simple taxes? I mean, the millions of people of H&R Block and all of these CPAs, attorneys, tax attorneys, I mean, what would they do? And at some point, all of these things are going to be there. But these are real issues. There's a lot of crap that people are talking about that I find interesting, but only in that I know by reading it, I'm really just picking up what's going out into, I'm picking up from the gutter. Story today, Black Lives Matter leader says white people are subhuman and suffer from genetic defects. This goes out on CNN. Somehow, there isn't a mass awakening to the horrible racism of some of the people in the Black Lives Matter movement. Although I don't want to condemn any movement because you have some, penetration by a provocateur like this young lady who is probably just saying things to get people really offended and maybe a little FaceTime. Maybe she really believes it. Either way, it's going to bring us to this conclusion where I think, I see a lot of this all going. Anyway, Black Lives Matter leader has come under fire after arguing on social media that white people are subhuman, suffer a recessive genetic defect, and musing about how the race could be wiped out. In a Facebook post, Black Lives Matter Toronto offshoot co-founder Yasura Kogali went on a rant, and she just says absolute silly things that sound very, very much like what you heard from eugenicists in the 1930s, that there were recessive genes in black people. So she's actually just reciting stuff that you would think that Hitler and the eugenicists and Margaret Sanger, this is what they're saying. It's just backwards, and it's against white people. But there is this general hatred that we're seeing in politics, and these people are being primed to continue to be a victim. Bill Kristol, remember this neocon from the Project from a New American Century? He is, or was at least, the editor at the Weekly Standard, which is another neocon, pro-Israeli PAC type paper that sold the Iraq War as this great thing that was going to bring peace to the Middle East, regardless of your foreign policy and whether you're a war hawk or a peacenik. What they planned and were able to execute in the wake, or rather in the aftermath of 9/11, was a pretty dismal failure. Pretty horrendous. So much so that Donald Trump has said, well, maybe we should go back and get the oil. Have we ever left Donald Trump? And aren't those international companies like Total and BP, aren't they getting the oil anyway? Aren't they? He knows it. He's not stupid. And so people are more worried about this. He said, lazy, spoiled white working class should be replaced by immigrants. And he said, I hope that people aren't recording this. And it doesn't become a thing because I'm almost unemployable, which is, probably true for, a person that's been constantly wrong. It has to be hard to be paid as an analyst, or, why would you want Bill Kristol's perspective on, stupid, idiotic, and, bordering on, justified massacres in the name of, Trotskyism. If anybody thinks that's a good idea, go ahead. Bill Kristol's out there. He'll come to your college and say crap like this. But, one of the things that's not being talked about by any of these people, and these are real issues. I mean, I saw this just made me sad. We'll talk about algos, but a report, bias response teams creeping onto university campuses threaten free speech. So-called bias response teams are creeping onto campuses across the country. This was the conclusion of the first national survey of bias response teams done by the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE. The report identified 232 public and private American colleges and universities that had bias response teams on their campuses, which affect 2.8 million students. These guys go out and they try to investigate if there has been some kind of aggression or microaggression or some kind of speech that has hurt somebody. Now, with the Milo riots, which, it's good for Milo. Goodness gracious. Guy goes from obscurity to New York Times bestseller, and this icon for Bret Bart. I thought that was interesting, but that's why you have these people that are, quote unquote triggered. You have new terms, Merriam-Webster's dictionary of things that are real. But microaggression and what was the other one? Another thing. Should be confirmation bias, and I think that was it. But more of these terms, and people are finding this to be really more interesting than things that are happening in the world, or looking at true ways that people are judged and discriminated against. So these bias teams, people are running around on these campuses. Just no, I can't hear the music, Ken. I don't know what the deal is. Let me see. I don't hear the music. I see that we're talking. I like music.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, okay, good. Sorry. See, so you talked through the first commercial break, and then you were talking through the second one, and so finally I took it down, just because I need to play some commercials.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, and then I thought, how can I get his attention, because he's not seeing the screen, so I thought I'll hang up on him, he'll have to call me back, maybe that'll fix it.
Oh, man, sorry.
So, sorry,
I get going, man.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I just couldn't figure out how to get with you, so...
Yeah, what I like to do if the audio is all breaking up, this is my problem. I'll end up muting the station coming to me, so that way I can mix a new intro over it, right, and just make it fade out so it sounds good. And then I forget to hit the button again to turn you back on. That's my fault.
Yeah,
that's why I'm doing it. It's not just because I'm neurotic or stupid.
I've made plenty of mistakes,
but I am neurotic and somewhat stupid. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Yeah. In fact, with you, I've been really bad about running your voice over commercials like at least twice.
Oh, today? Well, I didn't hear it coming back.
Not today. I'm talking about the whole time.
Oh, yeah. It's a faux pas. I'm sorry.
Nothing happened, but that makes me feel terrible when I do that.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right, man. Yeah, we've got a few hundred listeners there live, but I'm glad you're live, Doug. I'm glad I'm live, too.
All right. Yeah, and plus I was just sorry that no one was hearing what you were saying.
I know, man. I'm just...
story,
That's why I guess that's the good thing about the podcast, because I can always chop it up and the good stuff goes through. But at the same time, when stuff like that happens, I'm like, why did... Because you were calling me back, and then my other box started shutting down.
I should have texted you.
Yeah, maybe.
What's your text number?
Oh, you know what? It just goes into my email. So I see you. Oh. I'm looking at my phone, and it says Doug in all capital letters. So
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just reading my notes here, ranting along, and if I forget to turn that music up, I just kind of go into my world because you get distracted by the chat room, or
No, like I said, it wasn't bothering me.
I'm already all over the place, so I try
I was like, well, I wish they could hear it.
I know, damn it. That's why you have to listen to the podcast. You have to listen to the podcast because you get to hear me rant through Ken.
Okay, here you go.
Ranting and raving during the live commercials. One of the problems of doing the show from the studio here is that I've got too many knobs, too many buttons, and I like to post-produce it, make it commercial-free, and available for all of you. So if you're listening to the live stream, good thing, bad thing. I've ran through a couple commercials there because I had the studio muted. Good thing, I've recorded it all. It'll be part of the podcast. You can get it at blacklistedradio.com. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on YouTube. All of those places. So there's like 5 or 6 points or articles that we jumped across there. It'll all be continuous and it'll make a lot more sense. But for the most part, you can always go to the website. We have the show notes and all the stuff that I've researched during the week, putting together for you. So we talked about a lot on this show, all of the direction and focus towards gender identity and why this is the new focus interesting piece came out and said, this is from Heat Street, or no, excuse me, this was from the Wall Street Journal. Greek teachers in epic battle to save classics. PC brigades prefer gender studies. Teachers in Greece have criticized plans by left-wing government to scrap the mandatory study of ancient Greek tragedy in high schools and introduce instead classes on gender and sex education, saying this could bring about the end of classical studies. You can read Plato or not, but the fact that this has become a focal point is a huge, huge issue. This is the degradation of the academics, and why this is the quintessential example of the dumbing down of America. Rather than teaching people about the classics, understanding trivium, logic, rhetoric, debate, social commentary, trying to be able to objectively look at the world and figure out what the truth is. I mean, trying and moving to a place, I hate to say this so bluntly, but where you're trying to figure out, instead of finding the truth, how not to offend somebody, how to make everybody all-inclusive, by looking at their physical attributes, what kind of sex they're into, what kind of things may trigger them, how do they feel. You're studying a philosophy and a doctrine, learning a doctrine on how to be nice to people, so that nothing you ever says ever hurts their feelings. Which, I don't know what kind of value people really put on that in society. I mean, this is a huge, huge indicator of where things are going on college campuses. Not only are people becoming completely overrun with debt, but they come out with degrees that are literally useless unless you want to, the few people that want to be psychologists, that want to understand, personality disorders or other split personalities. I think when you feel like a guy but you are a girl and you're a girl, you have some kind of, split. I'm not a doctor, but I tell you what, people are more interested in what other people are doing in their bedrooms rather than who is screwing them. Interesting piece that we'll have to cover next week, how algorithms secretly run the world. And that's right. Whether you get a bank loan or a new car or you get put on a no-fly list, a computer gets to decide that rather than some evil white person. Some of you might like that a little bit better. I don't know. Guys, so much fun. Of course, go to the website, blacklistedradio.com. Get the podcast commercial-free. Thank you, Ken, and all of those at Republic Broadcasting for putting this show out and producing it. I'll be back next week. Until then, take care.